At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Axelrod of the Young Israel of Woodmere, who has been so instrumental in helping us to establish this program. And Rabbi Axelrod will introduce Rabbi Feiner.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I just want to take this opportunity to personally thank Rebbetzin Judy Steinig, the Associate Director of Community Services within the Division of Community Engagement at the OU, when she called me many months ago and laid out her vision for what a program such as this would be. So it was very theoretical for me. We never did such a program, especially focusing on the issues that are very current and on the minds of the retiree population. And I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity for the shul and for the community to have such a program for the senior population within the community. And it's really exceeded my wildest expectations. Last week, there was an initial group of registrants, and there was a little concern what the numbers would be. And Baruch Hashem, we have to add tables, and I encourage all of you, there's still 2 more weeks of this wonderful program for you to participate in it and to encourage your friends from throughout the wider 5 towns and West Hempstead area, encourage them to come and to participate. I want to make mention to thank Rabbi Judah Isaacs. He's not here, but he's the director of the Division of Community Engagement, and all the shuls, especially the shuls that are participating in this particular program, are shuls that look to the OU, the Orthodox Union, as a partner in enhancing Jewish life, which is one of the mission of the OU is to enhance Jewish life throughout America, and we thank them very much for the partnership that we have with them. One of the shuls in their community is the Knesset Israel, is otherwise known as the White Shul, and we have the opportunity to hear today from the Mora D'Asra, Rabbi Eitan Feiner. Rabbi Eitan Feiner is someone who grew up in the 5 towns. Many of you know him. Many of you go to his shul and have the wonderful opportunity to have him as your Rav. He's a noted lecturer, not only within the 5 towns, but for many different organizations. For STAJE, he participates as a faculty with monthly lectures at Lander College, at Torah College, very involved with his wife's seminary, Machon Basya, as well as he's the summer rabbi at Chai Lifeline, and he's a Rav who is very involved, not only, we'll say, in the classic rabbinics of shiurim, and he gives wonderful shiurim. He's a Torah scholar, but perhaps as equal is the fact that he's very much concerned pastorally with the needs of everyone who comes his way. And it's really an honor for us to have Rabbi Eitan Feiner share with us his thoughts on the particular theme of today, which is the theme dealing with food and issues of food, which is so much a part of our lives. So I now present to you Rabbi Eitan Feiner.
Thank you so very much, Rabbi Axelrod. I just want to make one correction. I don't know if all the unnecessary but very much appreciated compliments were true, but there is one revision that I'd like to make. He said that this is for seniors. I'm looking around the room. I don't see anybody over the age of 65. So on that note, they told me, it might be some seniors here. Maybe, Ram, I speak a little bit slowly, but now that I can look around the room, I see, no, I could speak my typically fast pace. Emir Hashem. Don't worry about it. They told me in the White Show a while ago, they said, Rabbi, you should know that everything is going great in the shul. If you would just speak as slowly as you daven, and you would daven as quickly as you speak, then we'd be in good shape. There's a lot to cover today, but with Siyata D'Shmaya, Emet Hashem will speak a little bit slower. I just want to take a moment to thank the wonderful Mrs. Judy Steinig for putting this all together on behalf of the OU, and it's a tremendous zechus that we have to work in conjunction with the OU, and a real yasher kochachay for putting this wonderful program here together at the Young Israel Woodmere, and a special akar satov, a specific, overwhelming sense of gratitude extended, of course, to Rabbi Axelrod and the incredible staff here at Young Israel Woodmere for allowing us to say shiurim and lectures here in this Makom Torah and Makom Tefillah. Perhaps what better way to talk about food than to start with a bracha? Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. Don't worry, Shas says here as a prop, I am thirsty. But why don't we start by asking that question? Out of all the brachas, all the blessings that we have, what in the world does it mean when you pick up a cup of water? You pick up a candy, and you recite, thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, the source, the origin of all the blessing in the world, Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro, that everything in the world came into existence by you uttering the words, you issuing those asara ma'amoros, as the Mishnah writes in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers in chapter 5 and Mishnah 1, be'asara ma'amoros nivra olam, God issued 10 utterances, and he thereby brought everything in the world, all the nivram, all acts of creation came into existence by God opening up his mouth. So in essence, everything in the world exists because God wished it, desired it to be so. Why specifically? And when we pick up an item, would we now say, Shehakol niyeh b'dvaro, I'm drinking a cup of water, so let me thank God for the cup of water. Well, I have to make mention that at the same moment that I'm thanking Hashem for giving me a cup of water, I'm simultaneously expressing my gratitude, Shehakol, that everything came into being. Why should I bring that into the equation? Just thank God for the candy, thank Him for the water, and that's it. I heard the following idea from the daughter of Mordechai Gifter Zatzal, the Rosh Hashiva from Tells, Cleveland, who explained, based on a story that occurred with regard to the author of Mirtam Eliyahu, Reb Eliyahu Dessler. Reb Eliyahu Dessler was in England for many years, and one time when he was in London, a balabas asked to meet him for a cup of tea. I said, how could you not have, if you're in England, you have to have your afternoon cup of tea, 2 cups of tea, 3 cups of tea. But what better place to have it than to go to a local tea house? They went to a coffee house, they went to a tea house. And Rabbi Dessler sits down right across from the balabas, and they have a cup of tea. They schmooze, they have lovely conversation, 45 minutes go by, and the waitress comes over and presents Rabbi Dessler with the bill. And it was, let's say, the equivalent of several dollars. Rabbi Dessler turns to the waitress and says, I don't understand. All I had was a cup of tea. What's a cup of tea? It's some water with some tea leaves. And why did that cost so much money? The lady explained to Rabbi Dessler and said, Holy Rabbi, you see, if you want to have that cup of tea in the privacy of your own home, then you're right. What is it? It's a cup of water and a few tea leaves. That's all it is. You know, it reminds me of the old joke, marriage is like a tea bag. Why is marriage like a tea bag? It comes so finely wrapped. You open it, it comes in a nice box, it's nicely packaged. You open up the box, before long you notice there's strings attached. A few minutes later, you find yourself in hot water. And then after a while, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Chas v'sholem, marriage is the best. So here Rabbi Dessler is sitting and he's looking at the bill, $5 for a cup of tea. And the waitress says, Rabbi, you have to understand, you're not just paying $5 for the cup of tea. You see, when you come to our coffee house, we're giving you this glorious ambiance at the same time. You're paying for the pictures on the wall. You're paying for the lovely classical music in the background. You're paying for the nice cushion on your chair. You're paying for the beautiful table. You're paying for everything that provides the appropriate ambiance that ensures you will have a most enjoyable experience while you're drinking your cup of tea. That's why you're paying $5. You think it's just a cup of water? It's not just a cup of water. In order to be holding a cup of water or a candy or anything of that sort in your hand, it's because God had the trees and the fruits and everything come together, all of creation. He had it rain in certain locales, and the rain is going to be collected by various reservoirs. And then you're going to have Poland Spring is going to come and distill some of the water and filter it. And they're going to have the factories, and they're going to ship it out to you, and the 18-wheeler trucks are going to bring it to the supermarket. They're going to package it. They're going to sell it to you. You know how many things, how many factors and variables needed to come together and sync? How many things needed to be orchestrated by a divine puppeteer, so to speak, pulling the strings every day behind the world's curtain in order to synchronize all the myriad diverse events so that you can have this cup of water now. This isn't just any cup of water. You know how many things had to go in, how many variables had to be kicked and inserted into place to ensure that right now at just after 2 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, when I'm sitting with the best people in the community, that I could pick up a cup of water and say, I'm not just thanking God for this cup of water. Shehakol nehiyeh b'dvaro. Everything in the world is coming together so that I can be holding this cup of water right here and right now at this very moment in time. Shehakol nehiyeh b'dvaro. We're not done yet. We're just getting started, so buckle up in your seats and get ready for a journey into food, glorious food. Anyone who's an Oliver Twist, Charles Dickens fan, one of my favorite songs from the movie, food, glorious food, but is it all glorious? Well, you know why food right now is in the forefront of our minds? First, we know that we're always keeping our minds on our diets. If I could start with a fabulous quote. This is my favorite book of quotations, and of course, as any Pope and Rabbi has to tell you need shelves of joke books, of story books. I also keep shelves of quotation books. My favorite one came out in the year 2008 by John Lloyd and John Mitchinson. They wrote several books, the Book of General Ignorance, Animal Ignorance. This one is called, and listen to this captivating title, If Ignorance is Bliss, Why Aren't There So Many More Happy People? So on page 116, they have a quote from Fran Lebowitz, famous socialite. Food is an important part of a balanced diet. You have to have food. I remember seeing a caricature years ago. They showed a woman saying, I'll teach the world what a well-balanced diet is. You know a well-balanced diet? Chocolate in the right hand and chocolate in the left hand. That's a well-balanced diet. Whereas President James Garfield once said, man cannot live by bread alone. He must have peanut butter as well. And finally, a quote from Dick Cavett. I eat at this German Chinese restaurant. And the food there is delicious. The only problem is that an hour later, you're hungry for power. One comedian once quipped that he stopped eating snails, not because he's Jewish and it's not kosher. He says, I stopped eating snails. From now on, I'm only into fast food. So why is food, not only because we're watching our diets, why is food, in fact, in the forefront of our minds, perhaps even right now today? Today, of course, is the day after Lag BaOmer. Everyone celebrated Lag BaOmer. You danced, I hope, at the White Shul Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos around Madura. We had a beautiful flame, a gargantuan yahrzeit candle for the yahrzeit of the wonderful Tana, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. 1,000 people dancing, singing. It was Lebedik. It was great. It was Geschmack. Meant Hashem, next year, you'll have to come join us if you didn't have the opportunity this past year. But we have a Lag BaOmer. We know everybody celebrates. Many people go out to shows. They go out to the parks, picnics, barbecues. But there are a lot of other things we're celebrating on Lag BaOmer besides just commemorating the yahrzeit of an illustrious, renowned Tana by the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Chassam Sofer, Moshe Sofer, writes in his response in his collected Tshuvos, Shal Tshuvos Sam Sofer in Yordei and Simon Reish Lam and Gimel on number 223, writes the Chassam Sofer that we're celebrating Lag BaOmer because on the day of Lag BaOmer is when the man, the heavenly manna, descended into the Jewish encampment during their trek in the midst of their sojourn in the desert. So we were zoche, we merited to have the man, that miraculous food that descended from the heavens above, that started, it commenced to grace our culinary delights, to be on our tables when? On Lag BaOmer, and he goes through the calculation, fascinating cheshbon, how it is on the same day as Lag BaOmer, when the Jews started to be able to receive that special gift the heavenly manna. That's one of the things we're celebrating. So what was so special about the heavenly manna? Well, we know that the color of the manna was what? Was white. Now, why would it be white? Why not gray, black, maybe black, gray, a little bit dull? But how about spike it up a little bit to make it yellow, make it green, some neon colors? Why would the man be white? Writes the Avnei Nezer, the Sukkot Rebbe, in his Sefer Ne'os HaDeshet. And he says the same way that the love on that white is kol gevanim, so to speak, it incorporates and encapsulates all the variegated colors of the spectrum. When you go ahead and mix all the colors of the spectrum together, what do you produce? White. Take a salad mixer and go ahead and take all the colors of the rainbow, the 7 primary colors of the spectrum, twirl it around really fast, and what happens? You produce the color white. So Hashem says, you know what's special? One unique characteristic about this miraculous, this mystical type of food for consumption is what? Is that the manna will be white, because every taste conceivable to mankind is contained therein in the manna. Think about it. What a pleasure. You don't need brachs, gourmet glatt, seasons. Imagine what it is to just go home, have dinner tonight, and say, okay, honey, bring in the man. And you have the man and say, okay, I'm thinking filet mignon tonight, and I'm thinking steak, and this one's in the mood for fish, and you want some pizza, you want fish and chips, you want some egg bun parmesan. That's it. It's easy. Just cut up the same piece of man. You have nothing to worry about. No fights. You know, the whole Adam and Eve in Garden Eden. Why was it the ultimate, the quintessential marriage? Adam and Eve. Of course it was the best marriage, because Eve never had to hear how well Adam's mother cooked. And Adam didn't need to hear about all the guys that Eve dated. They had such a great marriage. Nobody was a great culinary chef. And all you needed was what? The man. Cut up the man and whatever you wanted for dinner tonight. In fact, he writes, the Sukkot Rebbe, he says, you know, we have a mitzvah tzedakah. Where was the mitzvah tzedakah in the desert? After all, in the desert, didn't everybody have what he or she needed? Whatever you needed, you had everything at your fingertips. So where was the key in the fulfillment of mitzvah tzedakah? Very simple. If you take a poor person and he cuts up his man for that evening, so what's the poor person thinking about? I don't know, I'll have some water tonight. Maybe I'll have some rye bread. Maybe some rye bread with some butter on it. Maybe some cream cheese. I'm thinking about cream cheese, because until I was able to shave by Lag Omer, my mother saw my beard growing so long, and it showed or highlighted all the grays and all the whites. And my mother couldn't believe that. The rabbinate is doing that to you so quickly. She starts pulling out my beard. She says, Eitan, you got a little extra cream cheese stuck in your beard over there. She's pulling it out. So the poor person, what's on his bread? He's got some bread and cream cheese. So you needed the mitzvah tzedakah, which would allow the wealthy individuals to say to the poor guys, don't think about bread and cream cheese. Think about filet mignon. Think about a Chateaubriand. Think about some great red Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon. Think about some good stuff. But that was the man. Whatever taste you wanted was there. Made preparing supper incredibly easy. And what about the majestic, mystical quality of the Be'erisha Miriam? The Gemara says in Tractate Tainus in the bottom of 9a, we had 3 gifts. We had the clouds of glory, Ananei covered in the merit of Aaron HaKohen. We had the Man B'schus in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu, and of course the Be'erisha Miriam. We had this special water and the merit of Miriam HaTzadekes, Miriam HaNeviah. Writes the Chidah, quoting the Sefer Tzemach David, the same miraculous quality that we had in the man, we had in the Be'erisha Miriam, Zosamera, so to speak. Whatever drink you wanted was right there. So you sit down to dinner with the man, and you say, you know what, tonight I want to have some steak with some white wine sauce, maybe some portobello mushrooms, I'll have some asparagus and string beans on the side, and I want a drink, so whatever you wanted. You wanted a Shirley Temple, a pina colada, you wanted a grasshopper, anything you wanted, it's right there. You want a 7-Up, you want a Diet Coke, any drink imaginable. You sat down for dinner. The greatest culinary experience the Jews ever had was what? Well, Jerry Seinfeld used to joke, what did Jews eat before the first Chinese restaurant opened up? We had the best food in the world. And the best food in the world was the man. And anything you can conceive, anything you desired was right there. All you had to do was think about it. And then you had the Be'erisha Miriam, this miraculous water. Any drink that you wanted, it could go back and forth. Diet Coke, seltzer, tonic water, whatever you wanted, grapefruit juice, it was right there in the Be'erisha Miriam. Amazing. But it had an additional special quality as well. Not just that any taste conceivable to mankind was encompassed therein, And yes, it looked like white, the color white, to thereby highlight its very nature, that whatever you can imagine, every color, every taste imaginable, conceivable was right there. But it was also muvla bein ha'ivar. It was miraculously absorbed into your limbs. You did not have to go to the bathroom. Can you imagine? Way before the days of prune juice. And all you needed was just drink that. You never have to worry about going to the bathroom. The Gemara says in Tractate Chagiga 15a, Tesvav Amud Aleph, we have three things in common with the animal kingdom. Ochlin v'shosin kebehema. We have to eat and drink like an animal. Porin v'rovin kebehema. We reproduce. We have marital unions like the animal kingdom. And then motzi and rei. We have to defecate. We have to go to the bathroom, just like the animal kingdom. When you ate the man and drank the mayim from the Be'er Miriam, there was no need to go to the bathroom. The food was all miraculously absorbed into your system. What's that idea all about? Explains Rav Chaim Volozhin, the Talmud Muvak, the famed disciple of the illustrious Vilna Gaon. He writes in his Ruach Chaim commentary on Pirkei Avos, chapter 3, Mishnah 3, discusses it in his Sefer Nefesh HaChaim as well. Everything that we eat has what? It has a tzad hatov and a tzad hara. Every food in this world has a chelek, an aspect that's good, and an aspect that's bad. The good, the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, that all stays absorbed into the system. It sustains us, and it engenders growth and nurtures and fosters the ability to grow physically, to expand. And the chelek hara has to go outside of us. It's called tsoa because it's yotzei min haguf. It's called peresh. It's called rei. It's all ra. That's why it attracts the flies, the fleas, and the mosquitoes, the lowliest of all creations, because when that food comes out of your system, all that's coming out is the chelek hara. The bad side, you've already absorbed the good side. The bad side comes out, and that's why it emits a putrid odor and attracts the lowliest forms of all creation, the flies and the mosquitoes, because the good stuff stayed inside. By God's food, by the man, it's all good. Every aspect, it's kulo tov. There is no tzad hara, there's no evil, there's no bad side to the man, to the Be'er Miriam. And therefore there was no need whatsoever to excrete, to defecate, to get it out of your system. Everything was miraculously absorbed because it was all tov, it was all good. The man was thus muvla bein ha'ivarim, miraculously absorbed into the system, no need to get it out of you. That was the heavenly manna. In fact, why was it called the man? So one Hasidic Rebbe said, if you read the Psukim in Bashalach, it says, Ki lo yodu manhu. They didn't know what it was. There was no precedent. Nobody knew what this food item was. So they said, Lo yodu manhu. They didn't know what it was. They called it what? Explains one Hasidic Rebbe, it's not that they didn't know what the food was. It's that after you consumed, you ate a piece of man, you became a holier person in the process. You became a loftier soul in the process. We couldn't recognize each other because we were elevated spiritually after consuming the man and imbibing the Be'er Miriam. We became different people. Asks Rav Yitzchak Isaac Chover, a Talmud of Rav Menachem and Rishklov, why was it called the man? The man is spelled mem juxtaposed to a nun. What's that idea? He says there's a gematria. Mem is 40 and nun is 50. You know when the Jews started receiving the man? Only after we have 50 days between leaving Egypt, between the grand Exodus, and standing at the Pinmat at the base of Sinai, 50 days from Yetzias Mitzrayim when we left Egypt until we got to the base of Har Sinai, 40 days Moshe Rabbeinu was atop Har Sinai and gives us the Torah. Only after you unite, you couple together the 50 days separating Pesach and Shavuos, and add to that the Mem, the 40 days Moshe stood at the zenith, at the apex of Har Sinai. That creates the ability to only now have the Mon, Mem plus Nun, Mem 40 days corresponding to Moshe's 40 days atop Har Sinai, united, juxtaposed now with the Nun, the 50 days separating between Pesach and Shavuos. That's when you could get the man, because the man is heavenly angel food. The man, the Gemara says in Yuma, Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis 72b, that it's a lechem shemalachi ashori sochelvo. It's celestial food. It's the heavenly food that the angels of God consume themselves. That's the man. So let's go back now. Let's rewind to Bereshis. I know we're excited. We just said Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek. We're journeying now into the fourth of the 5 books of Moses, into the fourth of Chamisha Chumshei Torah, about to commence Sefer and Parshas Bamidbar. But let's take a moment to rewind all the way back to Bereshis. We know we had Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. This was utopia. This was it. So what do you think was their food that they ate there? We know they ate, they consumed, they partook of all the fruits, the trees, everything that was in Gan Eden. And what was the Maila? What was that lofty level of the food in Gan Eden? Listen to a Ramban, Nachmanides, and his commentary on the Torah and Bereshis and Perek Beis Posuk Yud Zayin, chapter 2, verse 17. Writes the Ramban, Nachmanides, as follows. The Ramban notes, V'achilo haisalo metchilo lioneg. All the food that Adam and Eve had, they didn't need it to sustain themselves. Because remember, before they ate from the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge, there was no concept, no musag of misa, of death in this world. If you're not going to die, if you're going to live forever, then by definition, there's really no necessity to eat because you're going to be around forever anyway. So why did God tell them you could eat? He gave them a zechut, a merit. I'm giving you all these culinary delights, the apples, the oranges, the mangoes, whatever you want. I'm giving it to you gratis, for free, because I love you, and I want you to enjoy the fruits of the Garden of Eden. I want you to enjoy these fruits and the food of paradise. V'yitochen, and it's sensible to assume, continues the Ramban, sheperos Gan Eden nivloim be'evorim, just like the mon. Writes the Ramban that Adam and Chava had no need to go to the bathroom because every food that they consumed in the Garden of Eden was 100% kulo tov. It was entirely good. So it miraculously was absorbed into their system. No need to go to the bathroom. And once they ate from the forbidden fruit, then and only then they brought to Misa, demise, that concept of dying into the world. And now we needed to eat, not merely for simcha and for tainuk, for our enjoyment and our pleasure, but henceforth we would need to eat merely to sustain ourselves, to keep ourselves alive. That was the food consumption of Adam and Chava, of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Paradise. No need to go to the bathroom. Everything they ate was like the mon that the Jews merited throughout their sojourn in the desert. So let me now throw out a question. Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, they had everything you could ever want, anything you could ever imagine. And they were given how many commands? One command? What was the one command that Adam and Chava were told to do? Everything in the world, and they were told what? So let's turn to Bereshis chapter 2, verse 17. Beis Yud Zayin. Eitz hadas, tov v'ra lo socha mimenu. I don't want you to eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Was that the only command that they were issued? You're right, according to Rav Avram ben Ezra, according to the Ibn Ezra, and other commentaries, that was the single, the lone command directed towards Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But if you read the verses carefully, and it's noted, it's pointed out by the Radak, by Rav David Kimchi, one of the greatest medieval commentators on the Torah. It's pointed out by Rabbeinu Bachai, one of the Gedolei Rishonim, one of the greatest commentators as well. And it's noted by the Meshech Chochmah, by Rameir Simcha from Dvinsk. Sorry to break it to you, but there wasn't just one command given to Adam and Chava. They were actually issued two separate commands. One command was, Bereshis, Perek Beis, Posuk Tes Zayin, 2:16, Mikol eitz hagan achol tochel. From every fruit that you have in the Garden of Paradise, you can eat, and I'm giving you a mitzvah saseh, a positive command. Writes the Radak, writes Rabbeinu Bachai, writes the Meshech Chochmah, Rameir Simcha from Dvinsk. Command number one was actually couched in the context of a mitzvah saseh, a positive command. Go out into my garden and eat from the fruit. Anything, fruits, whatever you want. Most popular fruit in the world, anybody know? Extraordinary Book of Facts, page 94. It's not apples. Mangoes are the most popular fruit in the world. The most harvested, grapes. Of course, grapes, makes sense. Then comes bananas, then apples, and then coconuts. But the most popular fruit in the world is mango. Go out into my garden, God says. Enjoy the mangoes and the apples and the oranges. Enjoy everything you want. And it's a mitzvah to do so. And only then was it followed immediately thereafter by the first negative command issued to Adam and Eve, which was what? Chapter 2, verse 17. I don't want you to go ahead and eat from this one isolated tree in the Garden of Eden. Eat everything you want. And there's a separate, distinct mitzvah that commands Adam and Chava to go out into the Garden of Paradise. Eat every single thing that you want, and it's a mitzvah to do so. And Rabbi Simcha from Davinsky in his commentary, Meshach Chochmah, adds that had they gone out into the garden and they had gone out to L'Shem Shemayim to eat because they wanted to bring Nachas Ruach to make God happy, so to speak, and they had done it for the right reasons that would have shielded them, it would have provided the necessary protection, that they never would have fallen prey to the lure and the seduction of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination, and consuming the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. But they didn't make it their business to go out into God's Garden of Eden and say, I'm going to eat L'Shem Shamayim for the right reasons. And thus, we know the end of the story. The upshot was they fell prey to that seductive lure of the Yetzer Hara, of the Nachash HaKalmoni, and they brought, in the aftermath, Misa, death to the entire world. Now, what was the fruit of the tree of knowledge? Anybody know? A lot of people think it's the apple. It's a misconception. You know why we call this the Adam's apple? You know, Adam's apple, it's really the thyroid cartilage. Why do we call it the Adam's apple? Writes Richard Lederer in his book from the year 2013 called Amazing Words. We call this little bulge, the cartilage from the thyroid, we call it the Adam's apple because the belief is that Eve gave a piece of the apple from the Eitz Hadas to Adam, and Adam started choking on the piece of apple. She gave him a big piece, and a piece of the apple got stuck in his throat, and that's why it became known as the Adam's apple. Now, it's a misconception, because everybody agrees the fruit on the tree of knowledge was absolutely not an apple. Now, people do associate apples with knowledge. We know that it used to be the custom. It's not so prevalent anymore today, but you used to come into school and give your teacher an apple. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, and apples for the teacher. Where did that come from? Well, according to the book, Extraordinary Book of Facts on page 79, it really came from the custom that they couldn't afford to pay the school teachers in the public school system. So it used to be a system of barter, so to speak, in lieu of paying cash for teaching our children. Instead, we'll take food. And what did they have a lot of? They had a lot of apples. So you put an apple on the desk and say, here, teacher, this is for teaching our students today. And it's made its way into society at large that now we would put apples on the desk. Some people erroneously also mistake apples, knowledge, teachers. The fruit of the tree of knowledge was most certainly not an apple. There's a three-way dispute in the Gemara twice in Shas Bavli in the Babylonian Talmud, the bottom of 70a in Tractate Sanhedrin, as well as in Brachos to the bottom of Daf Mem Amud Aleph to the bottom of 40a. We have three opinions. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chanina. Was it a ta'ina, a fig? Was it a gefen, because bad things come into the world from grapes, from drinking wine? Was it a ta'ina? Because we see the tikkun was vayitfru ale ta'ina, that God found they fashioned fig leaves to cover over their nakedness. It must be they had sinned originally with figs. Or was it a chita? Was it wheat? Which one was it? Chita, wheat, or a gefen, a grapevine, or it was a ta'ina, a fig. Comes the Medrash and Bereishis Rabbah and adds a fourth opinion that it was an esrog. An esrog sometimes in Chazal is called a tapuach. Ketapuach ba'atzayar. Tosfos writes in Shabbos, the bottom of 80a, that sometimes in Chazal we refer to an esrog as a tapuach. Perhaps that's where the idea comes from, that we make the mistake of assuming it was an apple. Because one opinion says in the Medrash that it was actually an esrog, but nowhere do we have a statement that it was an apple. You think this is just a Jewish concept? I'll read to you from a book that came out in the year 2006 by Krista Poppelman called 1,000 Common Delusions. Let's turn quickly to page 264. And one of the common delusions in the Bible is that Eve tempted Adam with an apple. Nothing in the Bible says anything about an apple. The fruit in question came from the tree of knowledge. The passage simply says she took some and ate it. She also gave her husband and he ate it. And it doesn't say anywhere that it was an apple. So where do we get this concept that it might have been an apple? She continues. The fateful piece of fruit might have become an apple later because malum, M-A-L-U-M in Latin, means both bad and apple. So they associated bad with apple. And that's where apple came from. Or it may have changed to an apple because apples were associated with the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite. But in the Bible, there is no mention whatsoever of apples. Geffen, a grapevine. Ta'ina, a fig. Or perhaps it was wheat. Just read recently as well that in Middle Eastern Dunkin' Donuts stores, they actually offer fig-filled donuts. I don't think it would go too well in the Dunkin' Donuts by us on Long Beach and Central Avenue. If you want figs, you'll have your figs. But fig-filled donuts, people like different things. Fig might have been an opinion in Esrog, it might have been an opinion, but there was no opinion called apple. But let's go now and recap. The Gan Eden, the Garden of Paradise, represented utopia. This is it. This is ideal society. And ideal society, God says, I want you to go out and enjoy my food, glorious food. I gave you this food, well, the shame what? For taineg and for simcha, to derive pleasure and benefit. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to taste all the diverse culinary delights that I've graced this planet with. I want you to go out and enjoy it. And it wasn't simply that you have it at your disposal. I'm giving you a specific mitzvah saseh, a special positive commandment in the Torah that says, go out, Adam and Chava, go out in the world and enjoy the fruits of the Garden of Eden. But then I'll couple it immediately thereafter with a separate negative command. Just keep off limits from one isolated tree and that's it, and you're good to go. If we eat for the right reasons, then all will be fine and dandy. Writes the Vilna Gaon in his commentary on Mishlei in the book of Proverbs, the very last verse in chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 25 states, Tzadik OHEL l'sova nafsho. A righteous individual eats to satisfy himself. Ubet and Rishoim tachsar, but the stomach of the wicked, of the evil ones, will always be empty, will always feel deficient. Explains the Vilna Gaon. If you're eating for the right reasons, then you'll eat the right foods at the right times, in the right place, and the right amounts. And you'll always feel satiated. You have everything you need at your disposal. The wicked, however much they eat, they just want to eat more. Someone who has a mayo wants Masayim. You have $100, you want 200. You have 200, you want 400. If you don't recognize that your food comes from God and that God will necessarily provide every single thing that you need to get through the day. Also, Liko Tsarki writes the Mabit. How do we get up in the morning? One of the blessings that we recite each and every morning is, we thank Hashem, Sha'aso Liko Tsarki. What does that mean? What about if you don't have everything that you need? The answer is you have everything you need. If you don't have it, then you don't need it. Somebody complained to the Halik, to the holy Chafetz Chaim once, I wish my life would be better. And the Chafetz Chaim responded, if your life would be better, it could be better, it would be better. You have everything you need at your disposal. We get up in the morning and we proudly declare day in and day out, Hashem Yisparach, thank you so much from the depths of my heart. Sha'aso li, it's the only blessing in all the Baruch Shachar that we insert the apparently superfluous word li. We add li, why? Because each and every person says, God, you gave me what I need. If I don't have that Ferrari that my next door neighbor has, then you know what, then I don't need it. If I don't have the swimming pool in my backyard, then I don't need it. Because we rest assured every day with our emunah and bitachon, tzaddik, be'amunoso yichya, tells us the Navi Chavakuk. We live with emunah bitachon that God gives us everything we need. Tzaddik says, God's going to provide what I need for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I will have everything that I need for today. I just have to eat the right foods in the right place in the right time. The Rishon, no way. They want to keep eating and keep eating. I was a rabbi for 2 years at a Pesach hotel in Rimini, Italy. And one time, the head of the hotel said to me, he says, Rabbi Fani, you're not going to believe this. He says, we have these wealthy individuals who came to the hotel. I have 200 different varieties of wine in the wine cooler. And somebody came over and said, excuse me, Mr. Netzer, but I don't think we have enough wine here. He says, but I'm giving you 200 varieties. He says, why only 200? He says, how much can you drink? I don't need to drink it, but I need to know it's here. He needs to know it's here. Says another person complained because there weren't enough cakes in the tea room. Says, I don't understand. I just gave you an 8-course meal. Who has time to go to the tea room? Tea room is in between this 8-course meal of a Pesach with this 8-course meal of a Pesach. Who has time to eat? I don't need to eat. I want to schmooze with my friends in the tea room, but I need to be surrounded by cakes. I need to be surrounded. How much do we need to eat? You know, Jackie Mason quipped. He says, you know, the Jews like food. A Jew goes on a vacation to Austria, and you see a friend, and he comes back from Austria. How was the trip? Oh, in Austria, did I have a piece of cake? Oh, did I have a piece of cake? You can't believe it. Did you like the, oh, who knows about the country? Did you see it? It doesn't make a difference. But the piece of cake, wow. A non-Jew, oh, have a drink, have another drink, drink a little bit more. Jews like to eat. Alan King, the famous comedian, once quipped, every Jewish holiday can be summed up. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. Blintzes, oily foods. It's all, what's going on here? Is this like the Mon? There's a wonderful book put out in 1989 called A Handbook for Kosher Living. And this article is from Kenneth J. Storch, MD, PhD, called Kosher Living, Healthful Living. And he writes as follows. Nutritional factors have been linked with 6 of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States. The public's interest in healthy food consumption is at an all-time high. This goes back, remember, 1989. But then he says, I don't understand. Let's take a look now at Jewish foods. Jewish foods include some gastronomic delicacies such as kishka, chopped liver, salami, and smoked fish. Now, I don't know about you, he left off pacha. Now, I'll tell you, I'm not a big fan of pacha, and I hope nobody's insulted. But you see, I was by a friend's ufruf in Square Town, a new square, with the Hasidim a number of years ago, and I had never eaten pacha in my life. And I was at a kiddush of my friend's ufruf, and I went to the kiddush, and I'm a big fan of Yerushalmi kugel. And I went to the kiddush, and someone said, here, have some of this. And it looked to me like Yerushalmi kugel. And I put 2 big pieces on my plate, and I take a big chunk. Hey, I was a bocher at the time, and yeshiva bochum know how to eat. And I take a big piece of what appeared to be Yerushalmi kugel, and I make the broch, and I put it into my mouth, and I had to leave the ufruf. It took me a half hour to come back to the room. That's when I learned about pacha. Some Jewish foods can be a little bit dangerous for you. I remember once I went to a hotel for Shavuos with my wife's family. Fleischmann's. Great hotel. It's actually owned by relatives of my wife, so we got a good deal. And I'm at Fleischmann's for the very first time. And an elderly gentleman, we'll just call him, I guess, 119 years old, because all of you here are young, so we'll just call him 119 years old. And he comes over, an elderly looking man, and he comes over with a bottle and a brown paper bag. Now that's red flag number 1. That's a danger sign. And he says, oh, you're a new guest at the hotel. You have to have something to drink. And my wife says, Eitan, nobody says no to him. He's a fixture here at Fleischmann's. He offers everybody drinks, and you can't say no to this wonderful gentleman, this nice, kind old man. But I couldn't see what was in the bottle, and I happen to not be a drinker. I have an aversion, actually, to alcohol. And I have to make him happy. And in front of my wife and her family, I have to go and have a little drink. And I take a little drink. He says, no, drink it like a man in 1 shot. So I drink it like a man in 1 shot. And I had to leave the room. I thought I burned a hole in my throat. And then I asked to see and it was almost 200 proof vodka. I don't trust elderly gentlemen anymore. Always look inside the paper bag. I said, how do we drink certain things? How many people have herring for breakfast? How do we reconcile this? We may enjoy these foods. How do we reconcile eating them with our concern for what's truly good for us? All right, Dr. Storch, we can and easily. Because these foods may be enjoyed as an occasional treat, but are not necessarily staples of a kosher diet. A more balanced menu would include the foods now recommended by nutritionists and also enjoyed by our ancestors. Further, the rich culinary heritage of Eastern Europe can be savored by the health-minded Jew if it's modified with some simple substitutions. It all comes down to one basic guideline. It's not about foods have to be off limits. It's everything in the right time and the right place and the right measure. Let's go back to joining Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Were they able to eat meat? Anybody know? So we walk out of elementary school, out of Sunday school. Of course they weren't allowed to eat meat. It's actually a machlokas, we showed him, a dispute amongst the medieval commentators. Rashi in his commentary on Chumash and Genesis, chapter 1, verse 29, and his commentary in the Babylonian Talmud and Tractate Sanhedrin on 57a, the Balei Tesis on 56b. They write that if the animal died of its own, then Adam and Eve were allowed to eat the meat. It's the Ramban Nachmanides who posits in his commentary on Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 that they were never allowed to eat the meat even if the animal died on its own. But you see already from the opinion of Rashi and Tosfos that if an animal died on its own they were allowed to eat meat. But there was no mitzvah to eat meat. After all, besides the Atkins diet, a lot of people we know, Simchas Yontif, Oneg Shabbos. Doesn't the Gemara even tell us in Masechah Shabbos, the Babylonian Talmud and Tractate Shabbat, the top of 118b, Kates and Ma'ango, how does one fulfill the precept, the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos, of taking delight and pleasure in Shabbos? Basar Shomein, eat the good gishmak, a piece of flesh. And what about Simchas Yontif? The Gemara says in Arei Psochim, in Babylonian Talmud Tractate Psochim, the middle of 109a, Kuf Tesam and Aleph, Ein simcha ela b'basar, ve'ein simcha ela b'yayin. Shenemar v'zavachta shlomim v'achalta samata l'fnei Hashem l'kecha, v'yayin is samach l'vav enosh, simcha is b'basar. People enjoy a good gishmak steak. I once mentioned Mike's Bistro in Manhattan. On the west side, a great restaurant I once mentioned in a drasha and shul. Somebody came over to me a little while later and said, Rabbi, I wanted to get you and your wife an anniversary present. I opened it up. It was a great gift certificate to Mike's Bistro. So I mentioned that to Mike's. I gave him a plug. I saw Mike came over. I took my wife. I got this free dinner. And Mike, the owner of Mike's Bistro on the west side, he came over to the table. I told him how I gave him a free plug in the middle of the White Shul. Hundreds of people. He says, Rabbi, dessert's on me. That's it. So I'm going to give Mike's Bistro good desserts. I'll give them as many plugs as I can. Fleishiks. Is it a mitzvah now to eat fleishiks? Were we allowed to? Well, according to some Rishonim, only if an animal died on its own, but everybody agrees that we were not allowed to kill an animal for the sake of its meat. So what changed in chapter 9 of the book of Genesis and Parshas Noach? What changed that now all of a sudden we were allowed to eat meat? Big dispute. Rav Hirsch, the Tzohamar, the Malbim, and the Ramban and the Meshech Chochmah. I'll just give it to you in a nutshell. The Sforno writes in chapter 6, verse 13 of Genesis, that the seasons changed. Seasons change, and therefore society has changed. We're not as strong as we used to be. Right? So first, the physical anatomy of mankind is not as strong. We need to sustain ourselves. We need to eat meat. Or because the seasons changed, or because the ground changed, writes the Malbim, or because the physiological makeup, the anatomy of mankind deteriorated somewhat in the aftermath of the great flood, of the great deluge. We needed further sustenance by now eating meat. And Noach, of course, is granted permission. We were now allowed to eat meat, and we fulfill Oneg Shabbos, and we fulfill Simchas Yontif by eating meat. But Adam and Chava were not allowed to kill an animal for the sake of meat. Writes Rav Kook in his commentary on the Siddur, known as Olas Re'iyah, in volume 1, page 292. Rav Kook states that Allah when Mashiach Tzidkenu comes, B'mheira v'yameinu, we're going to be resorting to what the ambiance was like in Utopia in the Garden of Eden and the Garden of Paradise before Adam and Eve partook of the forbidden fruit. And once more, we're not going to need to eat meat. That's Rav Kook. So anyone who wants to espouse vegetarianism, anyone who wants to be a vegan, don't worry about it. Eat him in Oneg Shabbos. Oneg Shabbos, Allah Chlamais, and Simchas Yontif. The Shulchan Aruch and the Poskim point out that anything that gives you enjoyment, if you like having a piece of salmon, you like having a salad, some pasta, if you eat that of shame for the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos, you're not obligated to eat meat. And if you want to fulfill Simchas Yontif by learning Torah, by taking a walk, by enjoying life, that's a fulfillment of Simchas Yontif, writes the Shagas Aryeh in his Chuvah Siman Samachay, number 65, learning Torah, whatever gives you enjoyment, you fulfill the mitzvah saseh Simchas Yontif. You're not obligated to eat meat. If you eat meat, you certainly fulfill the mitzvah. You're not obligated to eat meat on Shabbos and Yontif. There are ways out, and in the future we're going to go back to Utopia, and we'll be in a society when we won't have to kill animals for the sake of meat. So food, glorious food, yes. It is glorious, and it's great, and it's here for us to enjoy. But it's got to be the right time, the right measure, and the right place. Everything. It could even be pachap, and herring, and smoked salmon, and it could be chopped liver and caviar, but it's got to be the right time and the right place and the right measure. Writes the Vilna Gaon. Writes already the Rishonim, the Raavad and Rabbeinu Yonah. but you don't have to finish everything on the plate. God says, I want you to go out into my world and I want you to enjoy. The Yerushalmi states at the end of Tractate Kedushin in chapter 4 and Halacha 12, Amar Rabbi Lazar asserted that Osid Liting Din V'cheshben HaKamash of Rabbi and every man in the future, we're going to have to be held accountable. God's going to say, did you enjoy my world? Did you enjoy ice cream? Did you have pizza? Did you have steak? Did you go out and enjoy everything I gave you in the world? Because I want you to do the mitzvah of enjoying all those treats and culinary delights that I graced the planet with. I want you to enjoy it. And God's going to hold us accountable. Why didn't you have it? Now, that doesn't mean that you go into Haagen-Dazs or an ice cream store and you got to get butterscotch topping and chocolate topping. You go into the yogurt store and you need all the trimmings and 17 toppings. It means what? You always have to have the right measure. You got to cut. You don't need 2 scoops of ice cream. 1 scoop might be sufficient. You don't need to finish that 12-ounce steak on your plate with all the mashed potatoes and the gravy. And you don't need all the trimmings on the side and all the French fries. It's got to be what? The right time, in the right place, the right to measure. Everything that you're in control. If you're in control of your food, then it's Beseda Gamor, then it's all good. Where is the first point of distinction between Yaakov and Esav? Let's go to Parshas Toldos. Let's go to chapter 25 and let's turn to verse 30. We have Esav coming back from a hard day of work. He's doing a lot of hunting. Comes back and he sees Yaakov cooking some nice lentil soup. And what does Esav turn to Yaakov? Remember, we know that Esav was a Rasha and Yaakov was a tzaddik. Wherein lies the first Nekudas HaChiluk, the first point of distinction of Yaakov versus Esav? Where do we see? What does Esav say? He says to Yaakov, Haliteni no men adam ha'adam hazeh. He doesn't see it as food that God gave him. He sees it as, give me the red stuff. Now, when you see a friend of yours coming down the street, what's the first thing that catches your eyes? The chelek hachitzoni bioter. The most superficial thing of anything, and certainly food, is the color of food. That's what gets you right away. Do you know that the Sefer Otzar Yad HaChaim in Numbers 7:14 writes that you should not have red apples on Rosh Hashanah because red is associated with sin. Douglas Adams writes in his book, Ever Wonder Why, on page 20. Wendell Jamieson, page 74, A Father Knows Less. Page 1 of John Lloyd and John Mitchelton's Book of General Ignorance. You know why? We have red stop signs. Why? Because red reminds us of blood. That's the blood. It gets the blood rolling. That's red. Who is Edom? Edom. Red is what? Esav. Who Edom? He sees the redness. That's the redness. You know why? If you go to Spanish bullfight, why do the matadors use a red cape? Do you know it's not for the bulls? Because bulls are colorblind. It is for the audience. Because red gets us going. Red excites us. Stop signs, red lights. Notice the red right away. Esav, what is Esav? Edom. He sees the outermost appearance of something. Food by him is, give me the geschmack of red. Give me the red. Taiva, chamimus, blood. That's what he wants. That's what the admoni is all about. He wants the Edom, the red stuff. Yaakov is cooking lentils. Esav sees it as the red stuff. The first difference is food. You are what you eat, but you are what you're thinking about when you're eating that food. Are you eating it because God says, I want you to go out into my world and I want you to enjoy all the worldly delights and the mundane pleasures, but it's got to be with the right measure. It's got to be, you don't need to finish all the Brussels sprouts on your plate. Thanks, Mom. I don't need to eat them all on the plate. I can leave something over. You don't need to have 2 slices of pizza and an order of fries and a Kaddish and a tall diet soda. Doesn't make any sense, right? We have the big burger and pastrami and all the fat, oilies, and I'll have a Diet Coke. You don't need to have it all. We have to eat healthy. Why? And with this we'll close. The reason why we have to eat healthy is based on a pasuk in the last of the Chamisha Chomshei Torah, and Parshas V'eschonin in chapter 4, verse 9, and we read, Rak hishom lecha u'shmor nafshecha ma'od. Again later, chapter 4, verse 15, V'nishmartem ma'od l'nafsho seicha. Writes Rav Shimon Schwab from Breuer's in his wonderful work, Monumental Sefer Mayan Beis Shoeva, on page 400. He writes in his insights on Parshas V'eschonon, this is the only mitzvah where God inserts the word me'od. V'nishmartem me'od l'nafsho seicha. You're obligated to go the extra mile and to really watch yourself when it comes to your health. Not just your neshama, writes the Kli Yakar, writes the Marshal, writes the Minchas Chinuch, and mitzvah number 548, Tav Kuf Mem Ches, they all write that our sages of blessed memory had a Masorah, they had a tradition, that the pasuk is referring to your ruchnius, your spiritual soul, your pure, pristine spark of godliness that dwells inside you, that lies dormant within, and it's also a reference to your physical body. You're obligated to guard your health. And if the doctors say you have to eat on Yom Kippur, then it becomes a mitzvah to eat on Yom Kippur. Because it's a mitzvah of an ishmartem al nafsho seicha. The Sanzarov, the Divrei Chaim, was once told by his physician that he's not allowed to eat maror on the night of the Seder. We know that the night of the Seder has more mitzvahs. The Gra said 64 mitzvahs on the night of Pesach Seder. More mitzvahs, more commandments than in any other night of the year. And how many people we have to eat maror? We have to remember, Vayamaros Chayeyah. We have to be, well, the Sanzar Rebbe's doctor told him that he's enjoined, he is forbidden, he's not allowed to consume any maror for his health. So he told his Gabbai on the night of the Passover Seder, I want you to gather all the maror that you could find in the city, and I want you to bring it to my Pesach Seder. And the Gabbai couldn't understand. He was there. He took the Rebbe to the doctor. And the doctor told him, Rebbe, but the Rebbe said, I want maror. You got to bring the Rebbe maror. And it comes the night of the Seder, and there's the Rebbe looking regal, as aristocratic as ever, and his kittul, and he's sitting at the Seder on the up to maror, and he takes a plate full of maror, a huge plate full of maror, and he picks it up, and he says, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu melech olam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav etzivanu al hamitzvah v'nishmartem ma'od l'nafsho seichem, and he puts the maror down and he doesn't eat it. That year he didn't fulfill the mitzvah maror, but better yet, he fulfilled the mitzvah of an ishmartem al nafsho seicha. God says you have to guard your health, your spiritual health and your physical health. It means we can't overdo it. It's got to be the right measure, the right time. You have to see a nutritionist, a physician, but to know that everything is there for the taking within reason. God's going to say, did you enjoy my delights? But what's overriding is, you got to guard your health. You got to know what to eat, when to eat the right time and the right measure. The Rambam delineates for us a whole mahalach, a whole approach. And in Hilchos Deis, other Rishonim discuss that idea as well. But each and every individual, in consultation with your nutritionist, your doctor, you have to know, what do you need for your health, for your well-being? But go out and have in mind that your kavanah is not like Esav. You want to go out and enjoy, but you want to enjoy to get the sustenance and to give God happiness by going out into His world and enjoying it, l'shem shamayim, to enjoy God's world. So go out and enjoy the rest of lunch today. Enjoy all the culinary delights. And Emet Hashem should give you the gesund on Me'ah V'Yashem Shana, that we should come back and have another year with Mashiach Tzidkenu on your 120th birthday. Emet Hashem, with the old joke that somebody came to the rabbi and he says, I want to give you a bracha, you should live to 120. Another person came and said, how old are you? 100. I give you a bracha, you should live to 120. Another guy, 110. A bracha, you should live to 120. Then a guy came in, he was 119 years old, 364 days. It was his birthday. He says, how old are you? He says, I'm turning 120 today. He says, have a nice day. Everyone should go out, enjoy on Me'ah V'Yashem Shana, Baruchnius and V'Gashmius, enjoy the water, enjoy Sha'akol Me'yevet Varo, enjoy life, and we'll see you with Mashiach Tzidkenu and Yerushalayim HaKodesh from Hey Rav Yameinu. Amen.